Welcome to the launch of the 5th edition of my book, How to Write a Thesis. This book would not have been possible had I not been to Pennsylvania State University, where I learned about rhetoric and composition. I had to teach it. I learned about the massive industry and masses of scholarship and research that there is on these topics. So particularly though, I want to mention, as part of my Penn State experience, Bob Secor, who interviewed me when I applied to do a PhD at Penn State, and Marie Secor, who was one of my leading lights. Both were role models and mentors at Penn State during my PhD, and afterwards they became great friends. So they're really sadly missed, and I can't really talk about writing without saying Penn State, but also Bob and Marie Secor. Much missed, great people, for whom I'm very grateful. Good evening and welcome to the launch of not the priceless first edition, but the 5th edition of How to Write a Thesis. I was asked just last week, and it's not the first time I've been asked this, what is a thesis and why is it important and why is the whole book about it when clever people can write? So that will be explained at some point in the evening, possibly by my erudite speakers who have completed a thesis and are going to talk about it as well. But I'd like to welcome also you guys. This has been a village event for many years, as you can see from the photos. If you haven't yet come up and seen the photos from 23 years ago, please come up and view them at the break. I'd also like to welcome the onliners. There's a number of people online, I'm not sure how many or where they are, and welcome them to this event. And I'd like to welcome my speakers, who will introduce themselves and have been given total license to say what they like. The format for this evening is they'll be doing their talks just in a moment, and then there'll be a bit of a break, so if you want to do a run to the Spar or the Italian Cafe for extra drink or whatever it is, there's a wee time for that, and I'll be selling books as well for anybody who wants to buy the book. You can have, the 4th edition is here, you can have it for free if you like, because it's been superseded now. And then we're going to have a little bit of a chat and thank yous from me, and then there's going to be a DJ and lots of dancing. We'll push these tables back, and it's going to be mayhem. It is actually going to be a party. So that's the schedule for this evening. Without further ado, my speakers are going to introduce themselves, as I said, and I've given them total license to say whatever they want, so buckle up. I have no idea what's going to be said here, but I'm assuming it's going to be interesting in many different ways, okay? First speaker up is David. So it's a mixture of village people and people who've done PhDs with me and other folk I know from writing retreats. So welcome to the village person that is David McCusker. He's up first.
Good evening everybody. My name is David McCusker, and it's a pleasure actually to be here tonight to talk about Rowena and how she supported me when I was doing my PhD after I left prison. Yes, an interesting twist of fate resulted in me ending up in jail in 2013. And I spent 6 years at HMP Berlin, in Lochwinnoch and in Greenock. Life had been wonderfully ordinary up to that point. I had studied engineering at Glasgow Uni, did a couple of masters, worked in high-tech 15 years and started my software business. But after selling the company in 2013, all changed, and I started working in Berlin as a lecturer in maths. Everything was very new to me. I taught maths, it was my subject I studied initially. And there were many courses available to Scottish prisoners, or are available to Scottish prisoners, on all aspects of the academic curriculum, but also encouraging people to get employment, to make sure they're comfortable using the benefit system, and making sure they're rehabilitated and ready to re-socialise into the world on their release. Having started my business though, it was a view that there wasn't a lot of help for people that wanted to start working on their own, to create their own business. There was help for finding jobs, there was help for organising their benefits, but not for entrepreneurship, which is what I kind of was interested in. And you can imagine, the only reason you get in prison is because you're caught, all right? So there's many people in prison with many talents that really want to do something and contribute something back to society and when they leave. People might be plumbers, electricians, accountants, dog walkers, gardeners, beauticians, bookkeepers, all these people with great talents. And I thought there really should be a course that we can give these people the tools to start their own business when they leave. So I proposed that to the Scottish Business Service, they're quite a progressive organisation, and they said, yes, we'll fully support that, do the research, and they suggested it. I did it in the context or with a vehicle of a PhD. And why did they do that? They did that because they said, if I did research in a PhD, it would be robust, it would be defendable, and it could well be used then to effect change and make real change in prison education. And of course I was delighted to do that. So I began to study for a PhD and I did all my research in prison. As you can imagine, I was in a pretty unique situation. I was talking to prisoners every day, had loads of contact with prisoners, and really got to know a lot about what was happening when they were released, and what they needed and what they needed in a course such that they could start their own business when they were released and back into the outside world. I had done a master's with Aberdeen University, and so the PhD was done under their auspices, and I was given 2 supervisors. I have to say I was pretty confident that having a real insight to sort of entrepreneurship and also a real very good contact with prisoners, that with Aberdeen's blessing and their help, when I approached my Viva, it was all going to be okay. So those that are still to sit a Viva in some part of their life, don't listen. It was a total car crash. And I have never been more embarrassed in my life. I went in there for 1.5 hours when I was going to talk about how wonderful my PhD thesis was, and 4.5 hours later, the examiner pushed back his seat and said, "This is not a PhD document." My world collapsed. He said, "It's great research. It's great academic achievement. There's really good stuff in here, but you've simply got it in the wrong document. It's just not a PhD." And I was totally gutted. He said, "You can resubmit, it's going to take a long time," and he gave me 3 pages, foolscap pages, of revision notes. Not a good day in my life. You can imagine I was angry and furious, sad, crying. You know, I'd actually booked a hotel to go away for holiday. We went on a hotel holiday because I was celebrating my PhD that now wasn't done. Absolute bloody disaster. And when I went back up to Aberdeen, I gave them hell. Basically because I wanted to shout at somebody, but I said, I really should have been given some warning. You told me it was going to pass. And it didn't just fail, it crashed. They apologised, they gave me new supervisors, and they gave me their golden nugget. They said, the person you should talk to is Rowena Murray of Strathclyde University. She said, "You'll find her in Strathclyde University." I said, "I won't find her at Strathclyde University, I'll find her down the road," because I knew Morag and I knew she was a neighbour. That was the first time I saw him at Lochwinnoch. And so I approached Rowena, and what did she do with this angry man? What did she do? First, she cared. And that was important for me. I found someone that was interested and enthusiastic in what I was doing. Friends and family in Top Corner were interested and enthusiastic. After 5 years, they were still interested and enthusiastic, but they were trying hard. But Rowena was on my side from the very beginning. Passionate. And to someone whose ego had been severely bruised, she gave me the lift that I needed. Second, and I can see this when I read her books, she gave me a definite path to get the PhD thesis document right. Simple directions to make sure that the whole thing was logically consistent and actually would be put into the right format. And she also told me what not to do. And that was important, because you can imagine I was all over the place. But she said, do this and this, but not that. And the confidence I got for Rowena was that she had based her knowledge on a plethora, a huge variety of PhDs that she supervised, that she knew about. So I knew that she knew what she was talking about. 3 years later, I resubmitted my PhD, and in 2013, thank God, it passed. My study was important to me, and I hope it makes a difference. Education and business now be changed in that aspect. And, I feel in a very small way, in that huge wall of knowledge, that I've got a little tiny brick. And it gives me a great amount of pleasure. And I couldn't have done it without Rowena's help. I appreciate the many sides of Rowena's help, the many sides of Rowena, her enthusiasm, her precision, her focus, and her knowledge, many of which I'm sure will be referred to this evening. We now share a passion for wild swimming. So to be honest, I've probably seen more of Rowena and all her sides than most people in this room. When we go into cold water, the only person that swears more than Rowena is me. So to end, I wish Rowena all the best with her book and her continued work. I will always be grateful to her for her support in my PhD. She's an excellent teacher, a great communicator, somebody that really cares, and I'm proud to say, one of my friends. Thank you.
Well, good evening. My name's Andy Tapnell, and I think you might already find some themes emerge through all of these talks, and I'm going to build on some that David has kicked off. So I'm not local, as you might imagine. I actually always feel quite nervous about admitting this, even though I've lived in Scotland for nearly 40 years, but I'm English. Thank you. The therapy is going well. Thank you. So I was a late developer, academically. I was a complete duffer at school. I left school at the earliest opportunity, joined the army, joined the police, and throughout my years I began to regret that I hadn't worked harder at school. So I did an Open University degree in my 30s, a master's degree in my 40s, and then once I retired, after 30 years as a police officer, I decided a PhD might be a good idea. I was a year into it, UWS, University of Western Scotland, who I have to say were amazing in giving somebody like me with a non-traditional academic background and being a bit more mature in some ways, not in others, the opportunity to do a PhD, and I grabbed it with both hands. After about a year, and I had an excellent team, I knew that I needed some help with writing. My supervisors, when they saw my first piece of writing, said that really all you needed to do was take off PhD on the front and put Police Scotland, because it read like a police management report. So at the time, I hadn't fully appreciated what a total legend Rowena is in the world of academic writing techniques. She became, as I'm sure everybody here who's had Rowena to help them with their PhD thesis, an invaluable member of my supervisory team. And what she also brought was that they were quite young in terms of supervising PhD students. And Rowena had this immense wealth of experience in getting people through their PhD successfully and to a high standard. And she did that by, very similarly, spending a lot of time with me. And I'm always amazed when I meet other people how she finds the time to give all of us the level of support that she does. But she does. Like David, she gave me a very clear structure about how to set about writing my thesis and what to do and what not to do. Invaluably, she and Mo spent a lot of time with me personally, developing my thinking, getting me out of that police officer mentality and more into an academic mentality. She challenged frequently, and she pushed, more importantly, she pushed me, or equally as importantly, she pushed and pulled me through my frequent bouts of imposter syndrome and sometimes crushing lack of self-confidence. She introduced me to her amazing writing retreats, where my writing took huge leaps forward, not just in terms of quality, but also the quantity, and her invaluable Thesis Endgame course. And part of the joy of those writing retreats was actually meeting other like-minded people. These textbooks were invaluable for me. They were an absolute godsend, and they really helped me to develop my writing skills. The outcome of all this was that I survived the dreaded Viva. It was actually a pleasure, and for my newly met colleague over here, doing the mock Vivas is invaluable. Painful but invaluable. And I was lucky enough to survive mine with just minor corrections. In fact, I really think there should be a new category called minuscule corrections. 6 lines, I was a bit left. Anyway, I'm sure this applies. This was the bit that Rowena wrote. No, she didn't. I'm sure this applies to everybody that's in this room. The best thing about having Rowena as my supervisor was that I'd like to call her my friend now, and her amazing wife, Mo. It's an absolute honour. And to all the PhD students that are either in the room or listening out here who see this, I can heartily recommend her other books to you. It and They will be an excellent investment for you as you go through your PhD journey. Thank you very much.
Awkward kiss there, guys. So, I was not told I was allowed poetic license, maybe for a reason. No, I'm kidding everyone. Very nice to meet you. My name is Joanne Miller. I am very honoured to be here. I wasn't going to do like a wee biographical thing, but I'm going to be honest, because I can fly by the seat of my pants, as Rowena will tell you. So I am from a very traditional background academically. I got chucked out of school when I was 15. To be honest, I'm quite surprised we didn't meet in prison. Had a lot of fun in my younger years. Went back as a mature student. I had to do hires and do things like that. Was told when I was doing my hires, you can't spell sentence, let alone construct one. So, didn't have the best of confidence to start with, but lo and behold, I worked alongside gangs, always have done as a youth worker. And that was quite valuable to people. Not a lot of people have that kind of access, so I managed after going to university to get my PhD at University of the West of Scotland. But was I a PhD level student? No. Like, definitely not. So I think there's this thing that we all talk about called imposter syndrome, and I was definitely flying by the seat of my pants. I went to my first, you know, you do the poster presentations, and I had this really established education leader, and I put his name on my poster as Walter Hume. That's the football guy, isn't it? His name's Walter Hume. What's the Walter guy? Walter Smith, yeah. There you go, his real name was Walter, but I put Walter Smith.
Oh no.
So that's kind of where I started off, and very quickly my supervisors withdrew or would hand me like articles written by people who attended Oxford and Harvard, and they were like, can you try? Can you just try and write like this? And I was kind of like, have you met me? Like, I'm like, what? So Rowena Murray was never my supervisor. She had no formal link to me. And when she moved to University of the West of Scotland, she started running writing retreats. I think in desperation, one of my supervisors said, I've organised for you to go on a writing retreat. And I went on the writing retreat and was terrified. Like genuinely, I was like, oh my God, look at all these really smart, really clever, dedicated people, and kept quiet for quite a bit. Missed the bus back to the place because I had a drink, obviously. I had to phone Rowena and she had to fix me. And why she decided that I was deserving, and I think this is one of the things that Rowena does for people, is she makes them feel deserving. So I would like to start off, and this is how I was going to first of all start off with, if you think of an image of a raindrop hitting a pond. And when it hits the pond, ripples go out. And that's how I view Rowena. Because with no need, with no formal engagement, Rowena then funded me throughout the rest of my PhD, which was about 2.5 years, which Rowena can tell you funny stories about it afterwards. But there was lots of ups and downs, and she funded me to go to every single retreat that she ran, with no investment or no outcome for her whatsoever. This is the 3rd edition. This is my edition that I still have, that I still keep on my bookshelf, that I now, this was 12 years ago now, I think I did my PhD. I now buy every PhD student this book when they start, because it's a ripple. Because someone showed me, at a point in my life, academic generosity, and believed in me, and said that they could, or I could, more to the point. And I think that's one of the greatest things that Rowena does, is she makes people believe. So I think it's very serendipitous that today is International Women's Day. So I would like to, give that a cheer. A poem that reminds me of Rowena, called The Torchbearer by Edith Wharton. So in the heart of the darkest night, she stands tall, holding the light, leading the way, dispelling the fear. For those behind, her path is clear. With every step, shadows recede. By her radiant spirit, we all proceed. Past hurdles and doubts, she paves the way, for brighter futures, come what may. The torchbearer of hope, with flame so grand, igniting change with a steady hand. On this Women's Day, her light we hail, for with her guidance, we never fail. So thank you very much. The reason I was terrified was there was a dog barking at retreat outside. And Rowena literally was like, and stood up and walked out, and I was like, oh my God, what's she going to do? Is she going to kill that dog? What's she going to do? And literally came back in 2 minutes later, and the dog was silent.
How do I follow that? First of all, thank you so much for the opportunity to come up and speak today and just to share a bit of my thoughts. So, I'm Hazel. I am a lecturer at Napier University, but I am 8 weeks from submitting my thesis. So the final throes, so feeling a bit sick as I say that. But for me, what I wanted to share was, throughout this journey, how to write a thesis, and we're here to celebrate that tonight, has been integral to what I do, how I've written, how I've worked, how I've put together my thesis, and has now become integral to my colleagues, to my master's students that I look after. Again, we share the book with them. It's just such a powerful, powerful text, to be honest. And if you don't know the textbook itself, the first kind of steps in it, they talk about what's your motivation, why are you doing your PhD, who's your audience, what's the purpose of this, and defining your originality, what's your original contribution there, and having that so early on within my thesis, because it was handed to me within the first few weeks of me starting, was absolutely incredible. Just being able to say, these are really important things, they're things I have to keep in my mind throughout this entire process. I returned to all of these things at pivotal steps within my journey, and now kind of 8 weeks out, thinking, actually, what is my motivation? Am I going to be asked at a Viva? Who are my audience? My audience are actually going to be my Viva examiners, and I have written for them. I feel confident because of the books that I have written for the people that are going to examine me. And I know my originality. I can stand up here and tell you about it. I won't, you'll be glad to know. And Rowena would like to know I am not taking any artistic license. I'm not going to share any weird stories up here. If anyone wants them later, I am here for that. Yeah, it's on camera. And there's police officers here. So we're going to keep them to a minimum, but we can chat after if anyone's interested. What I didn't know I needed to know that was in the textbook was guidance around locations, where to write, how to write. And it turns out I write in social spaces. I love going to retreats. I met many of you in this room on retreats. I like going to cafes, to bars. It stops me procrastinating. It stops me going on Google, finding out that wombats square, poo square, bathrooms have belly buttons, frogs have teeth. Things I don't need to know. But if I go into a social space, it really helps me. It also helps me around timings. So I was a nurse for a very long time, and I worked a permanent night shift, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, for almost 10 years of my life. I write better at night, and actually reading that in the book, it was okay. It allowed me, it afforded me that opportunity to say, it's okay that I write better at 10 o'clock at night, that I am not a lark. I'm not a night owl. At the moment, I'm a permanently exhausted pigeon, to be perfectly honest, but I still prefer the night time. So kind of entering those final stages, one of the chapters is called Fear and Loathing. And my goodness, it's the most aptly named chapter ever. And it's about revisions. But actually my revisions aren't that bad so far, because I followed the textbook, because I looked, because I keep returning to it. Those early chapters were hugely important and have really set the scene for my entire thesis. And without that, I think I'd been in a much worse state. I certainly wouldn't have taken tonight off to come. I think I'd been in a corner hiding. It's allowed me to write coherently, to scaffold, as Rowena puts throughout the book, and to make sure I've got something that I'm proud of to hand in a few weeks' time. She also talks about the 385 yards, those last yards of the thesis and the writing. And it's really mentally challenging, and that's what I didn't expect. But the book actually talks about that. It talks about taking stock, about saying how well I've done so far, and actually celebrating that, and about well-being. And genuinely is the reason that I'm here today and I'm as far on as I am. It's taught me that I can go away and write in a cafe and go and hug alpacas because that makes me feel better. It's given me permission to do that. But I would say most importantly, we're not just here because of this textbook tonight. We can't underestimate the importance of it to so many of us in this room. But we're actually here because of Rowena, because of the impact that she's had on all of us. And I think, as you've heard so far, there's definitely a theme with this. She's inspiring, she's touched and supported most of us in this room and guided us through it. I met Rowena in 2022 in the summer in a monkey enclosure, and I feel like I should probably expand on that slightly. We were at a postgraduate conference in Brazil, and we were in a monkey enclosure, and I had spent 90% of the day watching a small chimpanzee instead of the presenters. It was proper cute, it was amazing. Cannot tell you anyone else who spoke that day until I met everyone. And I already had Rowena's textbook, so we have a group at work who talk about academic crushes, the people we want to be. And it's when, do you know when you're a kid and you want to be someone famous? So I wanted to be Dolly Parton originally, and genetics weren't as kind to me, so that got shelved. And then I wanted to be Kylie Minogue, but that didn't really work out either. And then I kind of wanted to be Rowena, and especially after she spoke that day, she was so inspiring, so engaging, and I actually forgot about that baby chimpanzee, which is, you're more interested in a baby chimpanzee. It's on my CV. Oh, right there. But for me, it was the kind kindness, the honesty, the transparency in her talk, in the lecture that day, that it is difficult. It's okay that it's challenging, we can get over this, we can work together, and actually seeing that kindness that often is missed in academia, that is missing in academia, and seeing that support that she's offered so many other people was really inspiring and role modelling, and that's who I want to be if I ever decide to grow up as Rowena Murray. So I would like to say 3 things. I would like to say congratulations on your ongoing success, your impact. I'd like to say good luck with this, and I'd like to say thank you with all my heart for all the kindness and support you've given me and so many others of us. Thank you.
Oh, the techie's coming, hang on.
Oh, I'll be fine. I've got Brilliant, thanks. I am in the first year of what was to become almost about a decade of PhDing for me. A friend and I decided that we would walk 100 kilometres from Glasgow to Edinburgh. How I felt at 5 AM after walking continuously for about 20 hours is kind of how I looked at how I felt when I met Rowena and how to write a thesis. There were some uncomfortable parallels. I was tired. The closer I got, the further it seemed. I was unreasonable. I was drinking too much caffeine. I had blisters, and I was questioning my life choices. And of course, life doesn't pause for PhD. It beautifully, yet rudely, interrupts those Gantt charts that we make when we're procrastinating. And those best laid plans got interrupted with an inconvenient frequency. And the universe apparently didn't care what version I was working on or to tell me where I had last saved that. But it could tell me what page I was on when some uninvited asteroid crash came into my life. All our theses are filled with words and stories, but painted all across them in this invisible ink are our lives. And sometimes that invisible ink you get to see is spilled over in black and white in acknowledgements of friendships forged, great supervisors, inspiring people, family heroes, hearts broken, and sometimes thinly veiled but humorous rage. So when I entered Rowena's endgame course, it really felt like the endgame. I could only see everything that was wrong with the thesis. The flimsy argument, the rubbish structure, the pages I had been working on when each of my 4 babies were born, and of course the many, many references that still were open brackets, ref, close brackets. What was I doing here? How the heck was I going to make up or break up my thesis? And Rowena's book and her insights and the endgame course gave me the distance and the clarity that I needed in order to make that next move. It enabled me to take a more purposeful approach to divorcing my self-worth from the quality of my work. And how to write a thesis met me where I was at. Sometimes it was where I was eager and optimistic, other times it was, I can't do, what am I doing? What am I doing with my life? It helped me find the next right step, and then the next, and then the next. And the book and community that Rowena and Morag continue to build around it are champions of the struggle and the stretch that it takes to build that significant original contribution to knowledge through how to write a thesis.
Hello, I'm Gillian, and I'm glad I came second last. If I'd used the time, I would use it to write something, but I haven't. So I've got some notes here. My background is in textiles and filmmaking. I'm an artist. I feel that when I say that, it's like some kind of confession, being addicted to some kind of horribly antisocial thing, like crack cocaine or something. but I am an artist. And my background was that I went to art school, I studied textiles. I hated it when I came out at the very end of doing my undergraduate. I decided I wanted nothing whatsoever to do with printed textiles. I wasn't interested in design, I wasn't interested in fashion. I had absolutely no interest in what I had just done, which was a bit unfortunate because I spent 4 years doing it. But what I did do was I gravitated towards a collective, an artist collective, and I got involved in running a gallery. And I realised that I was actually much more interested in social movements and how people organise together. And I was really kind of interested in that. And as that happened, I began to get drawn into documenting some of the events and things that we were doing as a gallery. So I went back to art school and I did my first master's in electronic imaging. So I was now a textile artist but also a filmmaker. And then from there I moved into working a lot in communities and using a lot of those skills in working in communities, making a link between learning and creativity. So that was all very useful. I did a lot of work for about 11 years in local authorities as a cultural coordinator and then as senior cultural coordinator before I completely lost the plot with local authorities and their ability to absolutely do anything without having to go through hideous procedures. So lots and lots of paperwork. So at that point I resigned and I got a job locally here in Lochwinnoch, and it was with the Local Energy Action Plan, and they wanted me to devise a programme that engaged young people with the climate crisis. And it was really only through that I started to draw back in the threads of my textile background and my filmmaking, and I got young people involved in all those things to explore the climate and environment. So I then left there and I got involved. I ran an organisation called Remold and went on to do a Masters in Research. And that's really, although I had seen Rowena around the village many times, it was really at that point that I met Rowena. I was at that point, I was doing my MRes, I had just finished doing my fieldwork in Tyree, and I came back and I was really burned down. And I don't know if you saw that on my face that day when I was out walking, but I was at that place where when my husband said to me, "Would you like a cup of tea?" I couldn't process what he was saying. I kind of vaguely knew he was speaking, this was some kind of language, but what was tea? So the very thought that I now had to come from fieldwork to start writing a document was unfathomable. And the fact that I met Rowena at that point was very fortunate. And she, my interest, in fact, just to kind of look at what I was making the work about, was it was practice-led. I don't think anybody else in this panel is practice-led. So really, as an artist, all I'm thinking is, okay, you want me to do an MRes and to write something, but actually what I want to do is make art. So I had to figure out how to write all this lovely field work that I had done. And the very simple thing that Rowena brought to me was these very simple things of chunks, work in chunks. Work in 750 words, and believe me, at that point, that was enormous, you know, to work in 750 words. I have written for a long, long time. I've written funding applications and I've written creatively. I could sit down and write 2,000 words easily on spreading honey on a piece of hot toast. That is, really, I could write thousands of words on that. Now it takes me about 3 days to write a very short paragraph, because academic writing is a completely different thing from creative writing. And I think that's in the place where I still am. I'm now progressed and I'm in my second semester doing a PhD, and I'm in that place again. Every little box that I open up that's interesting is like one of those images in a TV screen that disappears into several versions that go back and back and back forever. And where on earth do you stop? Where do you stop looking for information and pulling it in. And I think there are a lot of very useful pointers in your book, in those little summarised boxes, which are very good for an overconnected brain like mine, to look at those things again and again and come back to what it is exactly I need to do. Rule out everything else, throw out the stuff you don't need and focus on what you do need to do. So it is something that I dip in and out of now, and it has been very useful, and so thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is, well, posh name, Dr. Vanessa Collins, thanks for this lady here, but I'm just new. So I'd like to echo really what I think every single person has said tonight when talking about Rowena. We've heard about her kindness and her compassion. We've heard about her generosity, unbridled generosity of spirit. Something about how strict and scary she can be when she needs to be, and that's certainly required a lot of the time. But I think the main thing that's really come through is Rowena's ability to really see not only the bigger academic picture of what the project, whether it's an MRes, whether it's a PhD, whatever, but the person behind that, who is both a student and certainly in my case was a full-time mother, a full-time worker, a partner, someone with a long history of being in employment outside of academia, who is now trying to make it back after some 20 years, back through those kind of ivory towers, with their soul intact. And I'm sure there's a few knowing nods about how the academic process can feel like it's crushing your soul. Now, I've been lucky, as many of you know, to live in this village for some 30 odd years, and I've got to know Morag and Rowena and Morag, through the Arts Festival, through St Vincent's, through the Community Larder, and just generally from knocking about the village. But it was when I'd gone back to university as a mature student, I think I was about 35, 36, I can't really remember now, but I'd been out for quite a long time. And I went back to do my PhD. I'd been working as a broadcaster and a journalist, and it was, I think, that's great and it's really interesting, but you become a 10-minute expert on everything, but get to that 11th minute and you don't have that really granular knowledge. And that always was a bit of an itch that I couldn't really scratch, and I just wanted to really get an in-depth knowledge. I'd written a book about James Cook, and I wanted to go back and look at the kind of what was going on in the context of his day in a lot more detail. But I had, frankly, quite a horrific experience going back to university. It was really what I now recognise as incredibly toxic, and there are a few people in this room who I'm looking at one down at the end, orange hair, who I have sobbed many a time when I've been writing. It just feels like the whole world can be against you if you don't have that really embedded support. Because it's not just about the ideas, about the writing, it's about being held. And I certainly did not feel held at all. My PhD took me 10 years, during which time I had 4 kids, lived overseas for 3 years, was really ill, had lots of other interruptions. So I didn't fit. I was somebody who didn't fit the standard model of a PhD student. And I was really made to feel wrong in every kind of way. I was wrong because I was a scumbag journalist and broadcaster. I was the wrong kind of person to be a student. How dare I assume that I could ascend these ivory towers and do the academic thing? As I say, I was just a scumbag, and it really made me feel that, absolutely. I was also told I was doing the wrong topic. Now, my topic was James Cook and his explorations, and what we thought was down in the Antarctic before we knew the Antarctic was there. We thought it was a great civilization, 50 million people, land of milk and honey, great civilizations. The country that would discover the great southern continent would become the richest nation on the planet, quite simply. And I was looking at those kind of geographies of imagination and what we imagine was down there. What happens when you get down there and find it's only rock and ice? and how you get that new truth and fact into the real world through newspapers. Again, I wasn't doing proper academic work, I was looking at newspapers, for goodness sake. The public domain, the public sphere. It's not really acceptable, or it wasn't back then. And despite having written lots and lots and lots of books, and TV scripts and all of that kind of malarkey, I was also continually told I wrote the wrong kind of writing, that it didn't fit, it wasn't academic enough, it was too plain speak, it didn't use enough isms. And I really battled against this. As a broadcaster, I've spent nearly 40 years now trying to have plain, clear communication to my audience, and it really went against the grain that I had to almost deliberately make my language so opaque. Anyway, more on that later. So, somehow, and I can't really remember how, I ended up having a cup of tea in Morag and Rowena's house. I was utterly, by that stage, utterly broken. I was really, really seriously at rock bottom and despairing. I'd written a PhD by that time, mainly because this woman was in my head every time she bumped into me. Have you started writing yet? Just get down and write. Have you started writing yet? Yeah? You've just got to get something, you've just got to write, you've just got to write. But that was, over 10 odd years, that really begins to land. And I just went away, actually went back to my mum's house and just wrote for a week and did my chapters that way. So yes, I did take your advice, eventually. But I had a really incredible sort of happening then. I was having a cup of tea with Maureen and telling her how I was just felt really unsupported, it wasn't going right, and I was kind of really at rock bottom. Enter Rowena, who I think had been listening behind your doors in the backside of your house. And Maureen said, come through and chat with Rowena, because she's had some tough times. And you listened to me and you just went, that's shite. But the other words that she said was, you said, that's shite, but she also said, that's really unacceptable. And that was the first time anyone had validated the fact that that kind of bullying and that low-level misogyny and that really horrible, you don't fit, you're not one of us, you don't fit with us. The first time anyone had ever said, in the university context, that's unacceptable. That's really, really powerful. And without kind of missing a beat, she said, right, give us a copy of your PhD and we're going to do a mock Viva for you. And that's exactly what they did. I'd been too scared to go to any of the writing courses. You're very brave, those of you who have done. Because I think I just had no confidence at that point whatsoever. So I literally was too scared. Even as a writer, I mean, how dumb is that? But as a writer, I was too scared to go along to a writing camp. But Rowena and Morag and Larissa Campana organised this mock Viva for me, and they told me what I needed to do. I needed to get all the little cues and put little tags on the relevant quotes throughout the PhD thesis and the essential bits of information so I could zap straight to them and terribly slick and professional. And I did all of that. It was lovely. Give me a box of stationery products and I was so happy. So all colour coordinated. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for that gift. That was a real gift. Then, the really astounding thing is, they read 104,000 words on mapping myths, the fantastic geographies of the Great Solid Continent, 1760 to 1777. They actually read it and knew enough that they could ask really intelligent questions about it, like really quite granular questions on it, and they gave me a proper formal style Viva with loads and loads of feedback afterwards. And I cannot tell you how important that experience was. I was so stunned, not only by the quality of the information that I was getting, but here's the thing, they owed me nothing. I wasn't on their writing retreats, I wasn't a formal PhD student of theirs. I literally was a random person in the village. And they were already doing, as we all know, 1,000,001 different things in their lives in the village. They pretty much hold up not only the sky, but the earth and the trees and everything else in this place. But Rowena and Morag stepped forward. They stepped forward and they scooped me up into their care, and I use that word advisedly. But they then didn't let me wallow there. they told me to get on with the job of doing this mock private. So it wasn't, oh, there, that's awful. It's, that's rubbish, but now let's get you through. And it was that real strong sense of being held that is one of the great privileges of, I think, all of our lives when we meet people who do that. So it was not just what was being offered to me practically in terms of the wisdom, the experience, the knowledge, but it was having people of Rowena and Morag's experience invest in me as a human being in crisis, and that was transformational. I had my official viva, 3 hours of lots of snidey references to the fact that I was a scumbag journalist. And I passed, thanks to these amazing women here, I passed with minor corrections, most of which seemed to revolve around the fact that I'd started lots of sentences with however, comma, and apparently that was not acceptable. To which, again, because of the kind of, right, this is rubbish, we're going to power through it attitude from Rowena, I pushed back. And I said, no, I have my Fowler's Model English usage out, and I photocopied the appropriate page and said, yes, you can start a sentence with however, as long as you put a comma after it. And I literally sent that back to the examiners, along with the BBC style guide that said you could use the word however and a comma, and the Guardian style guide as well. So thank you very much, Rowena. And you know what? They backed down. So, Rowena, I really did draw on your strength for that. Your unassailable belief that a decent human being comes first and foremost. That when we critique somebody, we can critique somebody's work without criticising them as a human being, without slating them. And that it's the ideas that matter, not your background, where you come from, what accent you speak with, what paper qualifications you have. None of that matters. It's a job of work on the actual thesis and the human being. It's a joint procedure. Your, if I could maybe be so bold to call it, a take no crap stance on misogyny, on toxic environments, on bullying, that kind of thing, gave me the strength a few months later to propose a conference paper at the National Maritime Museum, and I got accepted, and I thought, right, I'm going to use my own voice for this. I'm not going to dress it up in this fake academic language that I'd been told to write by at least one of my supervisors, which didn't fit with me. I needed to find my own style. And I had the strength from just being validated by this amazing woman here and her team of amazing people to use my own voice. And I massively overran. I had to cut short. I still had about 5 pages left to do, so it wasn't even the complete speech that I'd written. But I was given the award for the Lecturer of the Year because I think I used my voice. There's that authenticity, which is a really strong part of becoming a proper academic. You're not faking it anymore. You absolutely inhabit the clothes, the ideas, the wisdom that come with you. And not only that, a few months later after that, because I knew the guy that was organising the conference, I said, well, I'll do a little paper at your conference down at Oxford University. And as a result of that, I was asked to present my paper and write it up as a big article in this huge, big job project. It took about 2 years. But again, through that, I got to meet really lovely, supportive academics, especially one amazing woman called Liz Bajan at Oxford. And they showed me that actually my experience was unfortunate, but it didn't represent every experience in academia. So again, thank you for that. That was really important to give me the courage to go forward and actually start getting stuff published. And that was all down to you and your belief that I could not only finish my thesis and survive the viva and get the PhD, but to do so intact as a human being as well as an academic. I think that's really, really important. So, congratulations on a new iteration of the brilliant book about how to write your thesis. It will live on, and it will encourage and motivate and inspire so many people who, like me, are sliding down to rock bottom and thinking this is never going to happen, I'm not right, it's me, I'm wrong, I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And this will show them I'm right, and I can write. So thank you so much for that. And finally, thank you for really underscoring, and you've heard it throughout all the speeches tonight, that it's not just the topic, the content and the structure, but it's the person bringing that to the foreground. And I can't thank you enough for being a huge part of my journey. So thank you so much, and thank you to all of you for listening.
Right, my turn. I have some thank yous, and there'll be a couple of stories along the way, but I will let you go and get more drinking shortly, as soon as I can. I need to thank the hallkeeper, Colin, and everybody from the Keep Fit class who on Thursday set up all your tables, the tablecloths, all that kind of thing. Round of applause for the Keep Fit class. To Mark, who's going to be the DJ later, this thank you in advance. To Cameron Murray, no relation as far as we know, I think, who's doing the IT tonight as well. And sorry? And Sam. Thank you, Sam. I wanted to thank the village people, and I'll come back to you again as well, but lots of people in this room attended. And if you look at the photos, you'll see what they looked like 24 years ago, myself included. I'm wearing the same jacket as I was wearing then, just for dramatic effect. It still fits, which is a plus. But there's a lot of people who used to come in 2 busloads of people from Lochwinnoch to Borders in Glasgow, Borders Bookstore in Glasgow. And we had some great nights. It was always the first Wednesday in December. So Glasgow was all Christmas stuff, it was all gorgeous. You know the bit when you walk through the Modern Art Gallery and the lights, it was absolutely gorgeous. And it was pandemonium. I mean, I wasn't taking everybody in the village to Borders, but it felt like it sometimes. It was poured in. And one of the kind of anxiety moments was Mona woke up one night and said, was this woman Mary Russell, whom some of you remember. Mary Russell attended everything, and she'd come with us to Borders, and neither Maureen nor I in the middle of the night could remember her getting back in the bus. So we were imagining, you know, as you do, Mary Russell wandering around Glasgow till wee small hours. Did she eventually get back? Well, we have to pay for the taxi, you know, I mean, all sorts of whatever I thought. So the next day we phoned Elsie Holmes, whom you remember as well, and she said, yeah, Mary Marshall was in the bus, it was absolutely fine. So those are the days when we never really had a list of people who were coming, and somehow we always managed to fill 2 buses, but not overfill them. I don't really remember how it worked. And we still have the artefact of the list. We used to run a sweep when people had to guess how many books had been sold by the book launch. And there's one woman in the room who guessed 2 would have been sold. And that's been passed up ever since. And I just routinely pass it up now. Because I then cast it up every single year, subsequent book launches, she then began to tell the story that what I meant was it was too many to mention. Yeah, very good. There was also, I used to hand out thank yous to even that person, bottles of Prosecco or champagne or something, just as thank yous to people. And apparently a subgroup of the crowd went to George Square, which was gorgeously Christmas stuff as well, as it always is. And they opened the bottle of Prosecco or whatever, and the cork flew into the tree, the Christmas tree donated by the Kingdom of Norway. And there wasn't any police presence that night that I'm aware of, and they got away with that. But there was all sorts of little dramas, and the last story I'll tell about these launches is, it was in 2001, and the most high-tech family in our street, they bought a DVD and they hadn't even bought a DVD player yet. So they got a DVD. Those were the days we were still using videotape. So that's how long ago this is, and my hair was a completely different colour. In fact, the housekeeper last night there on Thursday night said, "That's not you. It doesn't look like you." It is me in that picture. So the displays here in the book launch and borders of the first edition, I don't know if you need to come up and see it. The display rack has calendars above my book, and it's Kylie Minogue, Bruce Lee, Gareth Gates upside down calendars, and Will Young, and then there's my books underneath. So it's quite colourful, and I thought I'm just going to leave that. That looks perfect, actually. Calendars and sales. So it was always a lot of fun in various senses. We always had a lot of laughs, and then Morrig would capture everybody's drink order on the bus back. And Jim McKillop, who's still here at the back, would make up this enormous round of drinks, and we'd all come in and start clapping them when we came back. So it was a lot of fun, and thank you to those of you who have been doing this for so long. You're not off the hook yet, I might still keep writing, but it's all about the fun. I also need to thank my speakers, who were outstanding, moving, clever, brilliant people, and their speeches were fantastically emotional and erudite at the same time, which is quite a skill to pull off. We had a little present to give each of them, which I think we've just forgotten to bring into the room at the moment. The redoubtable monarch is away off to fetch them. But I just wanted to say thank you to you guys, because we've always had a speaker. This is the most we've ever had with speakers, and I appreciate every single thing you've said, and I enjoyed working with you all. I mean, sometimes it's hard work, right? It's always hard work, but it's really brilliant work. So thank you for it's a reciprocal thing, you know, and it's been great. Give them a wee presents. There we go. These are from the local shops. Keeping it local, these are from Soaps and Suds, the local soap plants placed in the village of Lochwinnoch. I just have one more kind of bundle of thanks to say, and that's to the Pennsylvania State University where I did my PhD, which was nothing like any of yours. I mean, it was hard, it was stretching, it was challenging, and there was a certain amount of intimidating about it as well, because it's the highest to be in the land and all that. But I had proper training. I had a whole panel of supervisors. I had to have 2 foreign languages back in the day. You had research methods, proper research methods course. I had to learn from Jack and Linda Seltzer. Jack taught us how to teach writing, competition. There was a whole postgraduate level set of modules I had to do. I was mentored, I was monitored with student feedback, which in the early 80s, that's how old I am, was quite novel to get feedback from students and actually get acting on it. So it was a phenomenal experience. Sorry guys, but you've taken it. But I wouldn't be here had I not gone to Penn State. I mean, I'd be somewhere. But I wouldn't be doing all this writing stuff had I not had that education from Jack and Linda and all the other mentors, Charlie Mann, Ron and Sandy. I'm just mentioning them in case they're online at the moment. Big gratitude to you guys for the phenomenal education I had, and I certainly wouldn't have written any of these books quite possibly. I was accepted to do the PhD at Glasgow University and decided not to because my education would have been studying one author with one supervisor, and that would have been that would be my entire education. And it was funded at the time, the PhD at Glasgow. And I could see people were doing the PhD like 3, 4, 5, 6 years, and then some walked away and didn't complete. And I thought, that doesn't look good. So when I was invited to go to Wilson College in Chambersburg in Pennsylvania to be a volleyball coach for a year, I applied to Penn State when I was there. So I was just very lucky in the opportunities that appeared. But just to say, big respect, a big thank you to Penn State. I still cite their work to this day in my little rhetoric course I offer in the UK. The only other thing I wanted to say was the books are here for sale, and just given that it's International Women's Day, I wanted just to show off this little writer badge. I found it here once, a badge, it's like a prefect's badge only for a writer. A colleague of ours who goes to a lot of the writing retreats, Heidi Green, was at a scientific conference, and she was told, International Women's Day, she was told, "Oh, you're too pretty to be a scientist." That's not that long ago. So she made badges that said scientist, and she would wear them like, about the place. So I said, "Would you make us a writer one?" So she did, and there's some here for sale. So avail yourselves of that. The final thank you is to Morag. Come up here. There's two things. I wanted people online to see that Morag's here and we're still an item, and this is what she looks like now. There we go. Come and visit any time, especially the Americans, you know, respite, if you want to come and visit us, you're always welcome. But this new edition, the 5th edition, has got new stuff I was asked to put in about neurodiversity. Apparently the neurodiverse find my structured right retreats super useful because it is strict, by the way, it's a good thing. The timings, that is, not me, there's no punishment exercise or anything. Not yet, anyway. So neurodiversity and well-being, which my learned friend has advised me on over the last many, many years. And what was the other thing? I can't remember. This is new material. Artificial intelligence, of course, I've read about that. I put into ChatGPT, you know what ChatGPT is? I put in what's wrong with the 4th edition of that book, and who is Rowena Murray, who do you think she is anyway, and you get all this stuff back. It's quite interesting, but it doesn't go in the book. But the chapter that is not changed at all is Morag's favourite chapter. Chapter 9. It's called It's Never Too Late to Start, and it's about, it doesn't explain anything, it doesn't provide any references, it doesn't provide a rationale, it just says, do this, don't do that, just like you said, don't do that, do this, here's a schedule, here's a timetable, here's the month, here's the week, here's the hour by hour, and that's your favourite chapter. Might be no surprise to those of you who know Morag. But next thing is she's standing here because it's been a sweep tonight as well. And there's a prize apparently as well. There we go. What was it? What's the answer? All right, okay. And the winner is Judith, who's just about finished her PhD. Nobody knows. And Lorraine Brown apparently has guessed 222 tonight. You also had finally, the task of writing on the yellow stickies. What is it Rowena does? So if there's any interesting answers to that, shout them out. Margaret, what have you got?
Well, it's blank at the moment.
I don't know why I bother. It's blank.
Builds community.
Builds community. That's nice. Any other answers?
Keeps Morag in order.
Keeps Morag in order, right? David Beck.
The block of paper isn't big enough, but it's all good.
A bit of paper isn't big enough, but it's all good. Was your line. Any other funnies? Comma.
Coffee buyer.
Coffee buyer. Oh, very good, very good. Yep, all of the above. But anyway, I just want to say thank you to Morag because we are the team that you all know we are, but it has to be said every so often out loud, like, you know, mutual thanks. Mutual thanks. Come here. There we go. Thank you, Morag.
Can I just say, I did knit this, and I was for 1 year a smoker. And it was my brother that started, you know, probably all the stories about how he started smoking. And I had to give up smoking because I was going to PE college and I had to swim and I couldn't breathe because of smoking. So I started knitting, and the reason I started knitting was to keep my hands active. Any of you that have been smokers, your hands get, so I actually did knit this, but I don't think I know how to cast on now. So I might have to speak to you, Jill, about how to cast on again, get knitting again. But I do, it's quite nice, I was quite proud of what I did.
had kept, apparently, this is before I was involved, she kept the packet of cigarettes nailed to the wall so it'd be looking at her. There's motivation. Anyway. Listen, thank you very much for coming, everybody. There's now this pause where you can come and look at books and get some more Debian and chat, and then we're going to have the dancing thereafter, okay? Enjoy yourselves. Thank you.